it's going to be pretty much an individual thing. Everyone goes through various changes based on what's needed most or what they need to address most. For someone, it could be like a healing crisis. They could actually experience negative symptoms in terms of their physical experience. They may go through some kind of a cleansing, but that experience is still positive. It's like people always misunderstand how the body works and attribute positive or negative to the experience. If you get the flu and you get all these negative symptoms, vomiting, etc., that's not, the symptoms aren't the virus or that's your body evicting it. And the same thing can be said with a healing crisis. You may get all kinds of sinus issues or clearing through the bowels or whatever. Skin, sometimes people have things come out, toxins that come out of the skin and they get some skin rashes. Most of the time these things don't happen because they're more gradual, but it all depends on the person, what their level of physical and emotional toxicity is. And when those things clear, and depending on how rapidly they clear, they could cause a negative side effect, or a perceived negative side effect that's actually the body healing itself.
Yeah, it's interesting. That kind of happened with me in my spleen. Because when I first started,
Yeah, you can get weird pains and weird, where energy's stuck and now it's opening up. It's almost like an energy cramp as that starts to open up. Then it feels better, but then you may have some other clearing symptoms that pass as a result. But those are all healing side effects. They're not negative. Like I said, just into something as a simple analogy like a virus. You can go through you can go through 24 hours of a very unpleasant experience, but that unpleasant experience is your body getting rid of it, not inviting more of it. I've had I had one teacher that I was exposed to. I didn't really learn from him, but I was exposed to him. I met him. He could light stuff on fire. He had the ability as a kid, really. He did, this was just something that manifested in him on his own, and he would read books, and all of a sudden the books would start on fire, and then he learned to control it, and he was in the 1997 World Qigong Conference, and one of my other teachers met him there and invited him back here to Michigan to do one of his seminars, and so I've seen people with odd abilities. I've seen people that, one guy I know that it appeared that he melted metal. The metal would just kind of decompose, but when you actually examined it, it was like it was no longer metal. I don't know how to. It's almost, I don't know what happened. You'd almost have to get a molecular guy to look at it under some kind of microscope to figure out, because it wasn't like it got hot or anything. It just was like it was no longer metal. It was something else, but it still had this of what it was, like a spoon or a fork or whatever. And he didn't have to physically touch it. He could just look at it, and so there was like no way to do a trick. And one time these two were together in a restaurant, and the one guy was, I'm not using names because I'm sure they wouldn't like me to use their names, but one guy was setting the menus on fire, and then the other guy was melting the silver, or decomposing or deconstructing the silverware. So there are people that have weird abilities. None of those abilities manifested in any of their students. I've had weird things happen to me. Some of them temporary, some of them more permanent. Healing ability is something that's permanent. Empty force is permanent. I've had things where my chi popped out into the air where people could physically touch it and see it. Like, it looked like a golden spaghetti noodle floating in the air, and you could touch and poke it, and it wiggle and work. It's really odd. That's only happened to me like 2 or 3 times, and I don't know what causes it, but if I could, I'm sure as it keeps happening randomly, eventually I'll figure it out. And that would be very nice, because then I could physically demonstrate that there's something odd that comes out of the body. I've been able to move some objects. All of them had to be plastic, which seems to indicate that it might have something to do with like a static field that builds up from doing the Qigong, but that doesn't explain the ability to mentally control it, like have it rotate left or right, or have it swing back and forth. It seems to still be connected to your intention or your mind. But yeah, some of those things are legitimate. Walking through walls, levitating. I can make my body heavier or lighter, but nothing where I can get off the ground. But I can certainly make it where some lift me, or extremely light and easy to lift. But I have experienced walking through walls and levitation in like lucid dream or astral projection type form, which I think is where most of it occurs. I did a distance healing on somebody that was recently in the hospital, and because of the medication they were on, and they were like in that half awake, half dream state, they actually saw me walk through their hospital wall door, and he would swear that I walked there, I was there, he talked to me, had a conversation with me, but I didn't intentionally astral project there. I just sent healing, and I was just trying to work on his intestinal problem because he had intestinal bleeding. And but you talk to him, and he would say, no, you were there, we had a conversation, you did all kinds of work on me, and then you walked right through the wall again. Yes, and yes.
Yes.
Yeah, this is really healing. When they talk about mind, body, spirit, Qigong is all of that. It's you're healing yourself physically, you're healing yourself mentally and emotionally, and you're also strengthening your spirit. You're literally building. It's like bodybuilding spirit. Well, it's not. There are certainly aspects of Qigong that are tied to religious beliefs. I'm exposed. I've got teachers that, like some of my, I don't even know if I call them teachers anymore. They're more like peers because we just interact. But I have people that originally taught me techniques that, some of them are Islamic and they have very strong Islamic beliefs, and some of them are Buddhist, and some of them are Taoist, some of them are Christian, or mixture, weird, odd mixture of Taoist Christian, and some of them are kind of like they have a faith in God, but they're not really tied to any religion, and that's kind of more along the lines of where I am. It's like really, if you talk to these other guys that started out as with a religious system too. Ultimately, when you realize that allness is all there is, how many alls can you have? You can only have one. So ultimately, all paths lead to God, or the I am, or however you want to phrase it, and because that's the source of all the paths. If you have a beam of light that radiates in all directions, and we call those religions or belief systems, then ultimately they all lead back to the source, the light source.